Hi everyone, this is Pam from Cards from the Heart, and I've been posting some of the shadow boxes, cards that I just started making, and I'll tell you, I brought them to two farmers markets, or a farmers market and a craft market, and everybody loves them versus a regular card. So what I'm going to do is I am using the We Are Memory Keepers by American Crafts Shadow Box Punch Board. Is this new? I don't think so, but it's new to me. And they've been selling them. You can Google them online. I think Amazon might be out of them, but I got this one off eBay. And hopefully Amazon, there's several companies who sell We Are Memory Keepers. Now, this shadow box is designed to make 2x2s, 3x3s, 4x4s, and 5x5 shadow boxes. I like bigger is better. That's just me. I love making big things, not little things. So, what I wanted to do is make, most of my paper comes in 6x6 that I buy. So, if I buy 6x6 or 6x8 paper, I don't want to cut into the design too much. So what I'm making is 7x7 shadow box cards, and the inside is actually 6x6. So it fits my papers perfectly. I also, they also sell a stamp and demo a stamp, or not a stamp, a punch, excuse me, so that you can punch the corner and make a little hinge. And I thought, oh God, I got to pay for this. I got to buy this too. And I did. But I realized I didn't need this. I did not need that because I wanted to make sleeves. So I am using 130-pound cardstock for both this and the sleeves. All the ones I have at my craft show and what I've displayed and showed you on all the sites, that I used 110 for the sleeve. Because I just got more 130-pound 8.5 by 11 paper in, which I use for card bases, I said, well, let's make a sturdier sleeve. So I'm going to take a 12 by 12 piece of cardstock, and I'm cutting it down to 11 by 11 to make a 7x7 shadow box card. So I take my paper and I take my upper corner and I put it in this little score section. It says box and has an arrow. This has actually 4 score lines, and I'm scoring it about 3/4 of the way because the scoreboard, this is too small for my larger card. So what I'm doing, I'm just going around and going 3/4 of the way. I know a lot of you use Score Buddies, and I use a 12 by 12 scoreboard because if you have the little small Score Buddies, it's the same thing that you have to do here. You have to turn your paper around in the end. So I'm doing this. Oops. Don't do that. I am doing this on all 4 sides. Then I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to flip it. And then I can extend the balance of my lines all the way to fit the 11 by 11. And you can turn it around on each score, but I just find it's faster. The desk that I'm sitting at to film this is the chair is too low for it, so I'm struggling a little trying to score straight. But I'm trying to use this desk because it's closest to the window, because the sun's going down and I could use some more light. So Okay, now if you look, I've extended each one and now it does, and you have these like double box corners, if you can see. I can't tell if you can see in the light or not. So, then I'm going to take my punch board and I'm going to move it down a little closer to me so I can stay in camera. And I'm going to take one corner, let's just start with the bottom, and I'm going to set that in, and there's a groove. And you move it over to the right and it's going to stop. And it's going to stop about even with the top of the blue here, just roughly. And that's where your paper stops. So you're going to punch. Now, leave it in the groove. Because you punch a spot, now you can kind of wiggle it and move it over. And now the paper will extend right to where that arrow where it says box. And I'm going to do it again. Okay? And then you get this notch cut out. Now, I want to do this side. So what I do is I turn it over. I don't rotate it, I turn it over. And I put this side in and I do exactly the same. Okay? Now, I want to do this corner. I'm not going to rotate it. I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to stick it in here. And punch it. I'm going to slide it over to the arrow, punch it again. Okay? I'm going to pull it out. I want to do the opposite corner. I don't want to rotate it. I flip it over. And I insert it. Using a low chair makes it hard to push the punch. Okay, so my 11 by 11 paper has now turned into something that looks like this. Because I'm using heavy cardstock, you could use lighter. I'm going to grab my Teflon bold folder so that I have a little bit smoother edges. So I'm going to fold it on the score line. And this one. Okay? Now I'm going to turn this around, and I'm going to do the same to the other side. Now I'm kind of using a rubber mat, a Ranger mat on my desk, because my desks are actually all glass on my desk here in my craft room. And I don't need you to look at my feet or my knees, so I just kind of have paper and a mat down. I had to refilm one day because I noticed, you're looking at my knees and my feet. I don't want that. So, on film. So I am creasing all these, just like so. So now I have one more to do, one more side. These are really simple, and they just bring your work up just a notch higher than everybody else at if you're selling your cards. Okay, so this is what I have. Now, some of the edges have points and some of them are flat. I'm going to start with one that has the pointed edges, and I'm going to bend in and I'm going to turn it and kind of make a 90-degree angle. And then I'm going to turn it, and then I'm going to take my right hand and I'm going to do the same thing with this side. I turned it one time, and now I'm going to rock the left a little bit and the right, and it'll slide right in there just like so and make a perfect mitered corner. And I'm going to take my left hand and I'm going to do the same thing. Now your mitered corner, your point's got to go down first before this. This rolls into it. So this is why I'm kind of doing it this way. and I rotate it, and I rotate it, and I have 2 perfect miter corners. I'm not gluing at this point yet because I still have to move these a little to get this one under these. So I'm going to roll in, roll back a little bit so that can fit in on both sides. Then I'm just going to flatten a little bit and wiggle it in. Voila. Now we're going to glue it. So I'm going to take this side, I'm going to roll back a little bit, the pointed edge, and I'm going to put some glue. Don't over glue it because then you make it saggy. And I just kind of take my finger and you can hold it. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to rock this back a little bit. I'm going to push it in, hold both sides. You have to hold it a little bit till your glue dries. Now, could you use hot glue? I wouldn't, because when you go to like wipe that little bit off the top, you would have it kind of sticky and gooey on those corners. So I certainly hot glue my flowers and stuff when I'm making a card in the shadow boxes and the pieces and parts I can. Now I'm using Clear Dries glue with the fine tip, and as usual it keeps clogging on me. Okay, so I put a little one, don't over glue, otherwise it gets soggy on that tip. And pull that one out and do a little glue there. Push that one down. Push that one in. I kind of wipe the corners with my finger. And if you're like me, I'm always inking flowers. And I always have ink on my fingers from holding the flowers. Try to remember when you're making shadow boxes, because you're wiping that glue, that you don't make a stain on your corner. And if you do, what I did to save one, because the shadow box was all built and I was repairing a corner and I was all done. So what I ended up doing is taking some Distress ink. I used Vintage Photo and an applicator, and I just used the same brown ink that I stain, and I just put it around the top of this so it looked like an old weathered wood. And you have a shadow box, voila. Now, some people will have you glue as you roll, but let me tell you, if you do that, and then your paper is a little too big or a little small or whatever, you can't slide it in that groove. So, and you also don't get it perfect, kind of perfectly square like this. So I then, if I want, I can glue it by just sticking that tip under and squirt a little glue. But I wait till my my 6x6 paper is in there. Now, they offer this hinge. And when I looked at the commercial for the scoreboard and whatever, the tutorial, I thought I had to buy these. It's an extra expense you do not need, ladies. I'm not using them. I prefer a sleeve, because as they're showing you on the hinge, they just are showing you to move away to expose the picture. I'll explain to you in a minute why I preferred making a sleeve. So on a sleeve, I tell folks when they come in my booth, I explain to them how I make my flowers, and I use watercolor paper, and I give them the whole, of how I make my cards. And I have shadow boxes opened on a 6-foot table, just all lined up. So they come and look at them all. And if they pick one up and they say, oh, I'd love this for my mother, and they look down and the sleeve says, to a great friend, they're like, oh, and you say, no problem. You change the sleeve. So I bring a couple blank sleeves, and I also make my sleeves all the same size for a grouping. And that way I can switch and say, oh, no problem. I have a mom sleeve right here, and I switch it from another card. Because they're all the same size, they coordinate with each other. And when they come in my booth, and they're looking at my wall of regular cards, and then I come out and I explain and I show my shadow box cards. I says, this is what I'm doing new, shadow box cards. And I said, I'll tell you why. So I pick it up off the sleeve, and I slide the sleeve on, and I says, this is why. You're giving a card. Here's your card. But there's your gift. And it just, their eyes get big and like, oh yeah. So this is a step up from a regular card as far as your customer is concerned. And instead of, using the 130, I use a half a sheet by a 6x6 for a front and back of a card. This is using a whole 12 by 12. So the expense is a little more, but I feel they're getting so much more. So I use one 12 by 12 piece to make this, and I use two 8.5 by 11 pieces to make the sleeve. So I was making these in 110, and all the ones I've showed you online, the sleeves were 110. But I just got in today, and Amazon brought me another 100 sheets of the 8.5 by 11, 130 pounds. So I'm like, let's see what it's like with the bigger, thicker. And it's great. It's really great. And they can throw that in a bumble envelope and ship it somewhere. So, how you make the sleeve. And I'm trying to explain the math to you a little bit, so that if you're making different size shadow boxes, how you can figure out what your own sizes are. So, your shadow box, remember, is 7 inches by 7 inches. So I cut the paper 7 inches and 3/16. And you're probably thinking, oh my God, 3/16, I got to count all those lines. Which one's a 16th? Let me explain. When you cut 3/16, put it in your guillotine at 7 1/4 and set it. And then back at one little teeny line, and that's 7 3/16. Because 3/16 is a little less than 1/4. And so that gives you your dimension. But you need a sleeve, so you got to go down the edges. So what I do is I add an inch for the 2 1/2-inch sides, and now it's 8, so it's 7 3/16 by 8 3/16. So to one side, I've added an extra inch than I did to the other side. So I know when I'm looking at this, when I grab my board, where do I need to score? I need to score on these 2 sides. So I'm going to stick it in my scoreboard. And I lost my regular score tip. Let's see if this will work. Yeah. So I'm going to score. I'm going to turn it completely around and score. So each side edge is scored. So that should bring the interior to 7 inches. And I'm going to do this again. So you're going to cut 2. And people in the UK, your page is a little longer, so you can probably only use 1 sheet. Unfortunately, in the US, ours is 8.5 by 11. But what am I doing? I just scored that 4 times. I didn't need to do that. Sorry about that. So, pretend I didn't do that, because I can't film again tonight. So, it was only 1 score mark is what I was supposed to do. So I'm going to score there. And score this side. I apologize for the error. And so I'm scoring that same score line that we did to make the shadow boxes to make the side. So I'm gonna do that with both sheets. Now, when you make your shadow box, sometimes your flower maybe is gonna poke up just a hair higher than what the side is. Well, so what I do when I make my sleeves for the ones that kind of are a little, have some height, I put my shadow box in like so, and you can put it upside down with your flower that's sticking up. And then you're going to glue both sides, and boy, I would love to have glue that didn't clog up the fine tip anymore. So what I do is I glue those two insides and I put it to the outside, both to the outside of the other one, and just line it up so that if you have something poking up a little bit, it will just make this depth a little higher. And voila, that is a sleeve. So I make a beautiful inside. I put my sentiment on the sleeve. That's just my what I'm doing. You don't have to do that. You can put, and sometimes I put sentiments in also. But that's how you make them, girls. Have a great night, and I hope I helped you with it. Good night, everybody.